Welcome back to Stretching Boundaries with Elasticity, where we invite you to the front lines of marketing innovation. I'm your host today, Aaron Perlett, a partner here at Elasticity, and our guest is Bert Vescolani, president of the Denver Zoo. Bert, how are you today?
Fantastic. Thanks for having me.
Well, we really appreciate you taking time out of your valued schedule to meet with us. You've worked in I don't want it'd be unfair to call it tour. You've always been at, whether it's the Shed in Chicago or the Science Museum in St. Louis, and now running the zoo. I mean, this has been kind of your life has been running these major attractions and thinking about these brands that become beyond just regional brands. They become, to a degree, they become global brands. And
Yeah.
so, you've got a really good foothold into managing that. But for those who aren't familiar with the Denver Zoo, as some might be, talk a little bit just about your amazing facility there that you lead.
Yeah, thanks. You could say I've fumbled through a lot of careers to end up in a spot that I feel really good about. So Denver obviously is Denver. It's a cool place. We've got the mountains that I literally can see from my office, and I'm not in some palatial estate. It's just a nice office, and the mountains are close. So it's this really great opportunity to invite the community into a zoo that is about 80 acres in its entirety on our campus. About 1.5 to 2 million guests a year visit the zoo. We're about 350 staff ish, on a regular time span, full-time equivalents, if you will. And then we do conservation work all around the globe. Right now we're in Peru and Laos and Africa and Indonesia and Malaysia, doing some work that is really community-based conservation work focused in on habitat and animals, but really engaging the community to participate with us and really own their environment and the wildlife that lives there, to buoy it up or take care of it in a better way or understand it, so that they can make good choices in the community around those animals. People love this place. We have high guest satisfaction. We have an opportunity to have these animals as ambassadors. So we have to take the best possible care that we can, make sure that they've got a long and productive and successful life with us. So we have, people that spend their day about looking for enrichment opportunities to keep them mentally and physically stimulated all the time, to try to create as much of their natural history as possible, or at least the good parts of their natural history as possible. Just coming back from Africa, I will tell you, the nature is tough, and it's sometimes hard to watch, a young animal get preyed upon by a group of lions. So in that way, we want to make it the best possible safe environment for them without predators, but providing food for them and care for them and mental stimulation for them on a day-to-day kind of way, as we do that. It's a 24/7, 365 operation. We may close to the public on a few days, but we really are always open. So it's kind of a mini city in many ways, right here at Denver Zoo.
Yeah, in your role, as chief executive officer, people might think, well, he doesn't have a boss, but we all have bosses.
Yeah.
At Elasticity, mine are our clients are our bosses,
Mhm.
Especially when they tell me, Aaron, we really don't like you in any way, but we like the rest of the team. But what is the end of the day, what's your bottom line responsibility?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I have a board, and the board is really who I report to, from a day-to-day, well, really kind of more strategic perspective and oversight of the organization. But like our clients are our guests, and I feel like my responsibility is to the community and it is to the organization to do the best job. And if we're not pulling our weight or doing a great job, they they can tell me, and that then gets to our board, and they can say, hey, you've had a good run, but it's time to get the next person in and do that. I have, my phone is next to my bed when I sleep every night, because we have animals, and they do things sometimes that we hope that they don't. and there's always that risk, and things happen. An animal may be sick, or we may be on call, but we're also, surrounded in this park in a community. And so we want to make sure that the zoo is safe for the community, but also safe for the animals and safe for our staff. So that is, at a high level, that's really, really important. Safety of our animals, safety of our guests, and safety of our staff. The second tier is how do we engage our community in a way that visit the zoo and beyond, but really at the zoo on this campus to really foster an appreciation and a caring attitude about the wildlife that we have here on our campus and beyond. So our education programs, our exhibit design and development, our signage, our messaging, all of that at a very high level eventually gets to my office. Typically, I'm not looking at the words and editing, scripts or anything like that. We have a talented team that do that. But I want to make sure that we're communicating effectively and doing it in the right way as possible, as much as possible.
Now,
and then there's the financial, right? We're a business. We're somewhere around $52-53 million daily operational, day to day. We're spending hundreds of thousands of dollars to care for and manage and make this place live and come alive each day. And there's a responsibility with that. We have limited revenue streams that come in, as you said, as an attraction in some ways. Our guests pay a portion of our bills. And then we have support, some government support that also helps support that. And then we fundraise and fundraise and fundraise. And that helps us to support. So those kind of three, guest, fundraising, and some government support helps us get through our day-to-day management of the business.
Yeah. And anyone I've talked to in the nonprofit sector the last 2 years, between nonprofit and the service sector, such as agencies like ours, the last 2 years have been really hard, especially coming out of on the tail end of COVID until now. And it feels like 2025 is there's a dim light at the end of the tunnel there. Are you guys seeing that from a fundraising perspective in particular?
Yeah, I you couldn't have said it better, Aaron. I would say that, there was revenge travel that came out in 21, a little bit of 22, 23, and a bit of 22. You had the rotational staff thing, right? Where people that were career professionals here all of a sudden felt unsettled because they saw what happened, and they were starting to question what they want to do, in the next part of their life and so on. So just like many businesses, we had that kind of, how do we do this differently? Because we had never truly experienced that at the zoo. And most of the zoos and aquariums across the country have staff that kind of get there and they stay there for a long time in some of those mid-level and senior roles. Then 24, between hot weather in Denver and really underperforming in visitation, and we're seeing that across the field. All of my colleagues, and it's a small group of us that chat with each other because it's a small group of organizations, and so we talk, and there's a few that are up, but very few are up, and most are down. Some are down as much as 15%, and some are around that 5 to 10%, and which is where we are. And so that's that piece. The fundraising thing is a little bit surprising to me. I got to be honest with you, because there's a whole lot of people making a whole lot of money in the market. This year was a very strong market year. It's not over yet, but it's showing really positive signs of a strong finish at the end, which would suggest that people have a lot of money that they're investing in businesses and so on, but they're not giving it away at the same level that they have. 25, we are budgeting on the revenue side very conservatively. We are not expecting to see, a hockey stick growth. We're expecting to see a little bit flat or a little slight increase, maybe a couple percentage points. But if that trajectory doesn't change over time, it will be unsustainable for many nonprofits and for a lot of businesses. Obviously, it's not workable. Revenues have gone up in some industries pretty dramatically. Ours is not one of them. We are, kind of trudging along, if you will, and trying to think, is there a different business model that we should be considering or looking at? Or how do we think about nonprofits have this tendency, how do we think about what we do differently? Nonprofits have this tendency to just continually grow and until something kind of, the nail waiting for a hammer, right? And then the hammer hits and you're like, oh man, how did we let it get there? So it's thinking about things differently. So we're being pretty conscious of our spending and not being too bloated in the operation, which can happen pretty quickly in a couple of good years.
Yeah, you better get rid of that leopard-shaped BMW you got for yourself. But,
yeah, my old truck that's sitting out there in the parking lot.
Yeah. So, we talked about your history of working in attraction management. What you're a guy from the upper Midwest. Why do you do what you do? What got you into this kind of thing? Is it something you stumbled into and you're like, I kind of dig this, but what was it that kind of got you into it?
Yeah, I mean, probably we don't. This is a 4-hour podcast. I can take you through it all, and there'd be a lot of sleeping viewers. So it's pretty simple. I grew up in a family that had family-owned businesses. So I grew up working. I always worked. I didn't know anything different. When I went to college, and I really wanted to pursue kind of biology and medicine kind of route was interesting to me, but really found that I liked the science part, but I liked the communication of the science part. I liked the activation of the science part. So I took a route to go the education angle for high school teaching and then later university, kind of part-time and as an adjunct. And I just fell in love with taking content, that not everyone understands or embraces in the same way I did, and trying to demystify it and make it exciting or create an opportunity for people to get excited about it. And I started volunteering while I was teaching in the south suburbs of Chicago. I started volunteering at Shedd Aquarium in Chicago. And man, I just fell in love with this way of bringing the public into this living laboratory of all of these exotic and unique and special creatures, that most people have never seen and may never seen except in a zoo or aquarium kind of situation in their lifetime. And that was intriguing to me. I was a scuba diver and I love the water, and I'd been, a sailor and all kinds of other things that, just kept me on the water. But looking below the waterline and looking deep into the water and freshwater, saltwater, rivers, whatever it might be, super cool to me. And that really opened my world to making that connection and helping people really appreciate it, right? Like my best example is a shark. Sharks are scary. Jaws did not help the shark population of the world. There are these freaked out people that never want to get in the water. We had people in Chicago getting into Lake Michigan like, I don't want to get attacked by a shark. And you're like, no, it's sharks don't do that for the most part. Yes, it does happen occasionally, but it doesn't happen. And sharks were just decimated as populations, right? They were over harvested and overfished. And the importance of talking about an apex predator, the key predator in the ocean, cleaning up all the bad stuff that's going on, the dead animals, the diseased animals, and so on, so that the oceans are healthier and cleaner, I found fascinating, right? I thought it was a really good story to tell, and a great opportunity for us to use a forum that we had in the aquarium to help expose people to all these, really unique animals and create that appreciation in a unique way.
Very cool. What are the biggest obstacles you face kind of day to day in what you do?
I would say they're the same business obstacles that most people have. Hiring and recruiting and maintaining a talented workforce is part of it. Demystifying or changing perceptions about either zoos or animals themselves, is the shark example. It is not rare for us to hear people say, "Oh, I hate snakes. I'm afraid of snakes." And you're like, man, if we didn't have snakes, the rat population, mouse population, some of these would overblow and you would have some issues there. And trying to look, I'm trying to say this as delicate as I can, but parents have, younger parents have sanitized a world for their children.
Yeah.
And some of it really needed to be done, to be honest. But some of it has created fear about animals in the environment. And helping them say it's all right and this is cool and you need to get dirty a bit and learn what's in the soil and learn what lives in this tree trunk and turn it over and discover the world around you, not just from the big kind of charismatic mega animals that we have, but the really cool macro world that lives there that's smaller than your thumbnail and plays a critical role in the environment, is super cool. And so helping people understand that and be comfortable with that and do that. And then lastly, leisure time. These things that we have in our pockets, these, computers that are supercomputers and
wait, hold on. Wait, what? Hold on.
Yeah, let me take this call. Yeah. The countless hours that people spend scrolling. And, I'm a fan. I love video games and I love that some of them are really taking people to new environments and positive places and thinking differently and creativity and so on. But, get off the internet, get off the devices and explore what's around you, man. Like there's so many cool things that you will drive by or walk by or bike by or whatever and never notice. And they actually are helping us live. Without them, we die. And so be selfish a little bit from a standpoint of nature and understand the importance of it. So I think competing with leisure time, competing with people's free time, we overprogram families. I was guilty of it. I get it, right? The 13th soccer game that you've gone to or the 15th tournament that you're, participating in, and you're like, really? And that's a kind of moderately programmed kid that, goes from, language lessons to music lessons to athletics and to whatever it might be. And it's just, like, hey, take time to really see things. That is a competitive thing for us, right? We're competing with that. And you can do the zoo in, a short time period, maybe an hour, hour and a half, which is kind of typical. Or you can spend a lot longer than that and really dive into what we're doing. We just want people to have a great experience and fulfill on that promise of executing our mission.
I'm sorry, but I wasn't listening to anything you were saying because I was
Can't
looking
repeat
at
it all.
I was looking
Yeah.
at Cowboys box score, and then I was texting my wife about sending my kids to dance lessons. So, all right, I've got to ask you this question because it's intertwined. It's kind of like when you get to a movie and they say the words that are the title of a movie, but how are you, Bert Vescolani? How are you stretching boundaries? How are you doing something different at the Denver Zoo that you would like to think is different at the Denver Zoo that is unique to what others maybe do in the attraction space?
Yeah, I don't know that I can say a lot about the attraction space and what we do different. I think there's a
Yeah.
lot of kind of repeating of what works in attractions that's done here a bit, maybe stretching a little bit on some of the approaches that we take. But I would say we first of all we were the first green zoo in North America. We got the first award for being the greenest zoo, and that was well ahead of our colleagues around the country. Maintaining that is hard, as you know. The evolution of technology and AI and green everything, right? From EVs to solar to wind to all that, and water quality and water management and waste control. We have waste, we have people, we have animals that produce waste, right? How do we do all of that in a thoughtful and responsible way? And then I would say the thing that were really an early adopter on two things. One was animal health and well-being. We looked at animal well-being just like you would look at human well-being. What is the composition of this specific animal, not just the species of animal, but this specific animal, its age, its sex, its where it came from, where it was born, all of that, and trying to create an environment where it can be itself, right? It can do the stuff. That was pretty unique to our profession. Although I would say really good animal care people kind of did that inherently, but to have a system, dedicated staff to that in an organized way that we're sharing with our colleagues all around the country to help them also improve that is really significant. And then I think lastly, I would add that we're being very thoughtful about how we do our conservation work in a way that you don't parachute in, do conservation, and then fly out, right? It's a part of the fabric of the community that you're in a responsible, thoughtful, and respectful way with locals, indigenous knowledge, whatever it might be, that is the fabric of that community and how it's intertwined into wildlife and systems and processes and so on. And then create a sustainable legacy as we leave, not in a placard that goes on a wall, but really in the community that owns it. And if that's in a way that it's a nonprofit that's formed that gives back into that community. We think that's really, really critical. We try to do that. It's not always easy, to be honest. And sometimes that takes a longer period of time. But that for me is meaningful because there's economics in these communities. You know, if you're in one of my favorite named lakes in the world, Lake Titicaca, if you're in Lake Titicaca and you're up there, there's a community that's living off of the resources that are there. And how do you tell that community that they can't because they're decimating the frog or toad population? That's unfair. That's a very Western kind of approach to save the animals and you'll figure out how to make a living. Let's figure out how to work together to find the things that can be to make a living and a sustainable livelihoods for your family at the same time that you're saving these animals and allowing for wildlife to prosper.
And of course,
That's hard, but it's good.
yeah, and of course, Titicaca is Slovakian for shoe oil. Not many people know that, but
There you go. I did not know that.
all right, Herbert Bertrand Burton's Vescolani, you said it all. You've done it all. We've been there. You've done that. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for coming on Stretching Boundaries with Elasticity. You are my friend. You are the man. And for more, please visit us at goelastic.com. Thank you so much, Bert.
Thank you, Aaron. Appreciate it. Really enjoyed it. Anytime. You know that.